Hey folks, this is Jason Lewis, the producer of the From the Shadows podcast. I just want to remind you about our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. We have a Facebook page. We would appreciate it if you like and follow. Also, join our discussion group on Facebook called After the Shadows. We have a Twitter feed. Please follow us on Twitter. It can be found with @podcast_from. Follow us on Instagram at From the Shadows Podcast. We have a YouTube channel. Go to the search bar at YouTube and put From the Shadows Podcast, and please subscribe to that channel. We are also on the Odyssey Radio Network, and we can be found there at odyssey1.com. We're still on the traditional podcatchers that everybody loves to listen to us on. We get a lot of feedback, so please rate the podcast and communicate with whether you're on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, or Google Podcasts. We're there, and we appreciate it when you leave comments for us. We also have a Patreon page. It can be found at www.patreon.com/From the Shadows. You can receive books, stickers, coffee mugs, and special content just for our Patreon subscribers. Check it out for yourself and see what packages that we have to offer. Well, that's all I have for you right now, folks, and thanks for being a part of the From the Shadows podcast family. So with that being said, let's get this episode started.
So, Howler, okay, I'm looking at our show notes, like, because we kind of throw out there what we, some subjects we want to talk about.
Right.
And you got me up early on a Sunday morning to talk about dogs. I mean, seriously, with my vocation, the last thing I want to talk about is dogs.
The only people that I know that hate dogs more than the post letter carriers are rural deputies. And excuse me, when I started in law enforcement, 30 years ago, a lot of the rural counties didn't have an animal control, so it would go to local law enforcement to take care of the dogs. And people move outside the city for two things. Guns and dogs, and you get a lot of calls for both. People shooting guns. People move to the country and go, "Oh my God, they're shooting guns out here," and you got to go out there and say, "Yeah, it's okay." And then dogs, they call and say, "These, the neighbor's dogs are over here. The neighbor's dogs are running," or whatever the case may be. And you try to explain to them is, there's no ordinances against that, at that particular time.
That's what dogs do, run around.
Hey, that's right. And you wouldn't, did you guys see it was in the news this week a little bit, the dog that was stealing the Amazon packages?
No, but he is my hero now. Now I'm starting to like this dog. A little bit.
It was the news article, and I'll send it to you later. It was people were trying to figure out what happened to their smaller packages were coming up, and then they recorded this dog. It looked like a golden retriever, and they had it on the Ring doorbell, grabbing an Amazon package and walking away with it. And of course, me being me, I instantly thought, man, somebody trained that dog to do that.
Yeah, that's great.
Because you could send it with hand signals. I got a couple duck dogs. You could send them with hand signals, get them to snatch a package and bring it down the street, and then you're not on there when you're stealing it.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
I don't know, but that made me think about police dogs. You guys ever work with any police dogs? Jason, did you ever have any dogs? Y'all have any hounds or anything over where you worked?
Drug dogs would come in once a month. I worked around a couple of them. They were both German Shepherds, though.
Okay, yeah. Well, I was talking to my cousin who's kind of still in the job, but she's a probation officer, and she works at the prison where I grew up, and they still have bloodhounds. I asked her last weekend, they still got the bloodhounds? She goes, "Oh yeah, they still." When we used to have manhunts, there's German Shepherds. And now, a lot of police departments are getting these Belgian Malinois, which is like a smaller one. But when I started, it was 100% German Shepherds, big, mean, nasty. They were a bite dog, what we call bite dogs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what kind of reputation they had. I went to, you guys probably don't know it. I went to Lincoln University, which is in Jefferson City, Missouri, which is a historically black college and university, the oldest one west of the Mississippi, actually. But it's in the capital city of Missouri, and there was and I was a criminal justice major, but I knew people around in the job before I had the job, you know. And there was an old man that served papers. He was an old retired lieutenant colonel from the Army, and he served just subpoenas, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when he wasn't smoking and drinking coffee, that's what he did. He carried and what? He's a chain smoker. And anyhow, and the old sheriff always give the paper servers the oldest cars, because if they broke down serving papers, it was no foul, right?
Sounds right. Sounds
yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like they don't want somebody going to an emergency call to break down. But if you're just serving subpoenas, you can't get your subpoena served that day because your car broke down. It's no big deal. But he had the old canine car, and he would park over there. You'd have to see where he'd park between the buildings when he'd serve papers. And why he served a lot of papers in college, I don't know. But he seemed to always be over there. And people would jump and cross the street when they read "Caution, Police Dog" on that car. They were that scared of police dogs. That's the reputation police dogs had back then, you know. There's no dog in the car, and they'd be like, "He's in there now." Oh, I think he's in there. No, he's not. Oh, bullshit, man, he's in there. And which led to, you know, I don't know if you guys ever seen anybody that's really had. This is back in the early '90s when crack was going on, and sometimes I was on call where it was a buy bust deal where these undercover guys, and I really wasn't into the drug enforcement like some dudes were. I just, you know, maybe it's because I grew up watching Miami Vice. I just wasn't into it that much. But we had a misguided dude selling crack, and he took off, and a foot chase ensued, and then car rolled up and let the dog out, and you know, they hollered, "This police dog's coming, or give up, or we're gonna send them the dog," all the stuff. And this dude could outrun all the cops, but he could not outrun the dog. And what he was trying to do is he was trying to stuff this crack down the front of his pants in his underwear, which I don't understand what that would have done, you know. And
this just sounds like a bad idea.
This dog tore him. I've seen people that were gunshot that didn't bleed as much as this dude. Because what that dog was trying to do is get his arm. You know what I mean? Get an arm is what he was trying to do. And this dude just would not. It was like he was holding this dog got a hold of his right arm, upper arm. And it was almost like he was holding it. It was either stuck in his pants or he was holding it with his left arm. And this dog wanted that arm. You know what I mean? And unless you've ever been, you know, I'm a pretty good sized guy. So we used to practice. A dude I worked with a lot. It was a dog handler. And a lot of cops didn't like him because he's an asshole. But I kind of grew up with him. So I would wear that bite suit, you know, where they put that big foam thing. You guys ever seen that?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen
and
it
I'm
before.
telling you what, when that dog gets a hold of you, he owns you.
Even in the suit, even in that
suit, you can't. It's hard for me to describe. You can't, you know, 80, 90-pound dog like that, or 100-pound. I don't know how big, you know. When they get your arm, you know, they can just jerk you. They just jerk you right down to the ground. Now, obviously, you know, if I was fighting to the death or something, I could probably take the dog with my good arm. You know what I mean? I could do something, but we used to, when I first started in the jail, I told you guys jail stories, how dudes come in there and eat and get coffee in the middle of the night and stuff like that, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, in those days, jail, you could bring, they still smoked in the jail. And people could bring stuff, items, you know, there were certain things, it was called the commissary list. So they could bring a limited, you could bring cigarettes up to people in jail. You could bring, like white T-shirts, underwear, socks. And I'm trying to think, beef jerky was on this thing. And there was a few candy items that you could bring in there. And so, if people were in jail and, their mom had come up there, their girlfriend or sister or whatever, and bring a brown paper bag. That's what it had to be in a brown paper bag. They'd bring a brown paper bag with, like, a bag of those mini Snickers or, 3 packs of cigarettes or whatever. And and they'd say, put this on Shane, Shane up in tank 3 or whatever. And
I was going to say, I mean, I'm all about the Snickers. I don't know about the cigarettes. Jail doesn't sound so bad.
There was one night, me and another guy, and I'd love to say his name, but I can't because he's still on the job. He's a captain. Me and him was working. He was my intern. And we had people were bringing this stuff in, commissary stuff in, like on a Friday night to bring it up, and give this to so and so, give this to so, and I had it all sitting over on the side on these pipe benches, steel benches, and but the police department kept bringing people in left and right, and I never could bring them upstairs to the inmates because I had so many people to book into jail. You know what I mean? There's just 2 of us. It's not like nowadays these jails are big. Even the one I worked in 30 years ago, now they built a new jail. It's about the size of a city block, and it's all automated. There's about 9 people working there, which is another thing I didn't understand, how you built an automated jail and need 5 times more staff than you had at the old jail. But I don't understand bureaucracy. Anyway.
That's a whole other podcast. I think it's a whole other episode.
Yeah. In the middle of all this debacle, this canine guy comes in, and why he wanted to go through the jail is beyond me. But he was this kind of guy. I told you a while ago, people are an asshole, and he always wanted to bring that dog because it scared people.
Yeah, gave him some power, right?
That's exactly what it was. I wanted to add a little more to the conversation, but I'm not, because it would be misconstrued nowadays as racism and police brutality. It was a standard operating procedure. But he walks in. He's got this big black German Shepherd to heel. Doesn't even have it on a leash. Tells it to heel. Walks in to the kitchen to get a cup of coffee or whatever, and his shepherd makes it about 2/3 of the way, and then it keeps wanting to turn around, and people that have been around dogs that they know when they're doing something wrong. So his little head is going toward the dude walking to the kitchen and back to us, and he goes 2 or 3 times. He turns around and slinks around, and he beelines straight for one of those brown paper sacks that are sitting there.
Oh, boy.
Sticks his big old head in there and comes out with just... Now, some of these inmates that's got money, resources, they send their baby's mamas out, and they, like the Sams, and bring all this stuff back, right?
Yeah.
So it'll say beef jerky, and this dog had as many pieces of Slim Jims and Jack Links as you could put in his mouth at one time. It looked like a stack of mini cordwood he had it on the Lincoln Logs. And I had to jump up, and I went over there to try to get all this. And if you ever try to take a bunch of stuff out of a dog's mouth, it doesn't work that good. So finally, the handler coming back out there. What's going on? I said, this effing dog of yours tells him to drop it. So now I got these inmates and stuff's been slobbered on by this big old black German Shepherd, And of course, at that time, and I don't know, I guess I thought somebody the other day that they had their attack dog was, I think, Swedish or Finnish, but this one you had German, plots and outs. All the commands were in German. So he beckons and deutsches with this thing to get all our beef jerky back, but it's been tooth handled by this German Shepherd. So what are we going to do? And I said, we're just going to put it back in the bag and give it to him. He's like, are you serious? I said, well, the dog can't get in trouble. You don't write the dog up? Tell the dog go down to Gerb's, that's the store. Tell the dog go down to Gerb's and buy some more stuff. So it's nighttime. So Hey, I walked through that thing and delivered it all up. Anyway, we just had to do these jail checks at least once an hour. Once every 59 minutes, you had to walk through. There was little timers. You had to touch it, log your thing through the jail. I went up there an hour or two later, and there was probably 7 dudes up in Tank 3 sitting there watching this 10-inch black and white TV. And it was like, this is no cable. So we had 3 ABC, CBS, NBC, and then there was a local Christian channel that played all these like Bonanza reruns and crap like that. And I go by there and there's 6, 7 dudes with a 10-inch black and white playing Bonanza on, talking about old Hoss and whatever. And every one of them had one of them Slim Jim beef jerky. They didn't miss a beat, man. Didn't think nothing of it. Eating that old dog slobber beef jerky.
Hey, look, I guess beggars can't be choosy, right? Got it. I said you gotta have whatever the beef jerky has on it. Whatever ingredients.
Well, and I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they thought their own dog did it, or times are tough. And when this world flips upside down, and I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen, right? All civilizations collapse at some point, and when this thing collapses, some of those inmates are going to be better served for survival than the best educated people I've been around, and that's about the nicest way I can say it.
Hey, anybody that can eat beef jerky slobbered on by a German Shepherd.
Oh, and they roll their own cigarettes, which is a whole different story too. Because back then they would roll cigarettes. So they'd bring like Prince Albert in a can and a bunch of papers. You know what I mean? Because a lot of these people have no money, so they could manufacture so many more cigarettes by themselves. You know what I mean? And then what happened is, I was working that day when I don't remember if it was a state law. The rules changed where they come out one day and they didn't make all the buildings non-smoking right off the bat. Everything's no smoking now, but back then they didn't. And they came out with a thing that said all the county buildings starting next week are going to be 75% smoke free, or it was just a very large percentage. Everything had to be smoke free by like the first of the next week or whatever, first of the month. And they were in an absolute panic. And I was in there, and my sheriff, and this is back when the Democrats ran everything. My sheriff was an old school Democrat, and the judge, I was walking with him, and the judges were Democrats. And then, God dang it, John, John was his name. What are we going to do now? Because they were all smokers, right? Everybody over 45 at that time was smokers. 40, whatever it was. Every adult was a smoker, it seemed like, at a period of time, especially the cops and the firemen. So the sheriff goes, I'll take care of it like I always do. And he went down there, and I remember him. He had the plans because they'd been wanting to build a new facility for years. So he had the old plans to the courthouse and the jail, and the jail was attached to the courthouse, in an old school way. And he sat there and got a piece of paper, and he stood some calculations, and he sat down and got out a typewriter, his IBM Selectric typewriter with his letterhead, and spun it through. And he was a piano player, of all things, like a church piano player. He was an excellent piano player, and that translated him to be an excellent typer. And he sat there and typed this whole thing up, and he pulled it out and handed it to me, and he said, we're going to bring that upstairs. And what it said was the courthouse complex was, and I'm making up numbers because I don't remember, 100,000 square feet. 78,221 of it is the 4-story jail. You know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah. We're going to make the jail non-smoking. So the judge and the prosecutors and the sheriff, all those people got to smoke, and I had to go back down there and tell the jail, starting next Monday, we got to go through all those. We got to search, toss all those cells, and take all the cigarettes, all the papers, everything away from them.
That's fantastic. Isn't it? Hey, what'd you say about bureaucracy?
That's how it works. And people, Democrats that can type seem to know how to navigate it better than anybody I've ever been with.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.